Year 1960, Sharpeville Day, 69 people, innocent South Africans, of course, killed and hundreds more wounded after peacefully protesting against restrictive pass laws. We're taking that conversation further, but also I'm inviting Dr. JJ Tabane to the conversation. Now, weekend newspapers, of course, we know that they are reporting former UN Women Executive Director Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka has been approached to contest the position of ANC Deputy President. Former Minister of Health, on the other hand, that's Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, has asked the High Court in Pretoria to declare the Digital Vibes report unlawful and unconstitutional, but also focusing on 62 years since Sharpeville massacre, where 69 unarmed black people were shot down by apartheid police for protesting against pass laws. So Dr. JJ Tabane joins us today. Happy Human Rights Day to you and good morning to you. Let's, I suppose, start off with Sharpeville massacre, and we'll get to the other stuff first, because I mean today is 62 years on, and the conversation about whether or not to name it Sharpeville Day or Human Rights Day continues. Where do you stand on this topic?
Yeah, look, I think it's Sharpeville Day because, you know, when 69 black people are mowed down, we can't keep minimizing these issues and sort of calling it what it is not. And I think that conversation has to start. It's 28 years of democracy now, and I think that we shouldn't be afraid to have those conversations. You can still have another Human Rights Day allocated in the whole calendar. You have got 365 days to choose from, where you can allocate something that you call so nebulously and generally. This was Sharpeville Day, a commemoration. People died there, and I think, you know, 100 years from now, people would have forgotten if you don't call it by its name.
Right.
And I think that that's really where I stand. And I will be talking to the president of the PAC, Darius Moloto, about that tonight. So we're focusing on Sharpeville and what it means, etc. Of course, we will touch on issues of human rights, but with a lens of saying people were mowed down, and how do we avoid it as a society going forward. It's really quite important that we don't minimize these kind of days, and I hope that someone will have the courage to have it renamed soon.
Absolutely, and of course looking forward to the conversation with PAC President Darius Moloto on Power to Truth. Let's go also into other political news. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka entering the ANC race. What's that all about? Is she keen?
Look, I haven't spoken to her, and I did speak to her on the show and asked her a straight question whether or not she'll be re-entering politics. She was a bit non-committal about it, but saying that she can't fold her arms, and she was focusing a lot more on, working in civil societies. You know, she runs the Mlambo Foundation, which deals with various issues of education in particular, etc. So a very upright, decent citizen. I've worked with her before, and I tell you, Tumelo, this is the kind of person who, if she was made deputy president or president, will flourish. She has done that job before, so no surprises that she could be considered for that kind of job. But whether she has the appetite to go into the mud, because 2022 December is truly going to be a bloodbath in ANC terms from a point of view of this unity. You remember that in Nazareth, the unity was the key factor, which has failed, because if you look at how the top six looks like, it's almost like people from different factions. So she doesn't identify as any of the factions, although she has thrown her way to say she would think the president should get a second term, which immediately puts her, whether she likes it or not, in the CR22 camp, which may not please the RAT forces. So I'm not sure that she's ready for sort of playing in the mud. But if for some reason she ends up in that position, I think she'll do a good job. She's one of the most decent people. But as you may imagine, as soon as her name was, was touted or raised, there was already discussions in various political WhatsApp groups saying, no, she was former COPE, she's a COPE defector. As you know, COPE is a swear word in the ANC. Once you've defected there, you'll forever have that monkey on your back. So there are people already raising that as an issue to say there's no way she's going to ascend, because the ANC says she must be to be in the NEC, you must have been in the ANC for, I think, 10 years or something of that nature. So others are arguing, no, but she rejoined the ANC in 2010. So what is the story? So you can expect that in the coming weeks we're going to hear more of that kind of conversation, that of people who are trying to discredit her,
right,
despite all her sterling record there.
But it seems, on the other hand, one person, if reports are anything to go by, who's not, sort of resistant to the possibility of joining the race is William Keyser. That's if reports are anything to go by. And I understand, besides the political front, he's also, suing the SIU.
We had this conversation over lunch yesterday with my wife here at home, and there's no English way to describe this, but in Setswana would say which means that he's got absolutely no shame. He's got zero shame. One of the most disgusting things that happened over COVID, where now over 100,000 South Africans have died, was that our health workers were put on the front lines and without PPEs and so on. And so any sniff of corruption around PPEs must be looked at with absolute disgust. When something like this has a finger pointing at you, you disappear and you keep quiet and you go quietly into the good night, which is what Mkhize should be doing. The SIU report is glaring in his neglect to start with. Let's forget about the stealing. The fact that this happened under his watch should be shame him enough not to make it now a big deal where he wants power at all costs. He wants to still run for office and so on. When in fact, we all know at this rate, besides that digital scandal, that this has been his habit. It's been mentioned so many times in commissions of inquiry, whether it be the PIC or ESCOM or whatever else, that he always has a hand in a cookie jar. And this is just rubbing it into South Africans who are without shelter today, who are without these rights we are talking about, have to listen to this corruption of cash being, misused and so on. And Willem Keyser has been at the center of it in many instances. And I think that I'm totally, very few things surprise me, but on this one, I'm shocked that he really thinks that he can use the law and some loophole to blame his DG. This is what happens with politicians. They instruct you to say, I want digital vibes to get this contract. And then they try to keep their hands clean. And then when, things turn around, they then try to blame you to say, oh, it's not my responsibility. I don't sign contracts. It's a DG. We all know that this story when we've heard it before, Tumelo. And I think this is truly disgusting, especially on Human Rights Day. You have to be dealing with, people who have been given positions of trust by society, and then they go and abuse them, and then they abuse the systems as well, and then in the process abuse us, over again. COVID killed many health workers because some of them didn't have proper equipment and so on. And then you have a minister of health who has absolutely no shame, and a president who failed to fire him, by the way, despite that this was so glaring. And I hope that he really goes and rots in prison eventually, despite all the maneuverings that we see happening, including, by the way, similar theme with the state capture report that we spoke about last week.
Right.
Instead of now saying we'll spend R1 billion trying to find out the truth, let's now act on that truth. There's dilly-dallying. People are now there's another committee over a committee that must come and try and whitewash this thing. And all of these things about power play, because everybody wants a possibility to stand for office and be able to say in the December conference, no, this thing is still in the courts, so it's sub judice, so we can't talk about it. So in the meantime, can I be elected? Right. That's really what it's about. Right. It's not about trying to find the truth or whatever else. We know these things. Unfortunately, we live with these people, we live amongst them. We know that they are stealing, and one day somebody has to do something about it and draw the line in the sand. So I don't know. So we'll see what happens in this coming week as we also go to Parliament to see this whole issue of the public protector. Another issue there in the front pages of, I think, the City Press, where the ANC doesn't want Ramaphosa to be investigated over his comments that money of the state is being used for party political purposes. Right. Why not?
Right. Yeah.
Because we need to get to the bottom of that, because that is where the theft starts. They steal money from the state, they use it for party political purposes, so they can be in more positions where they steal even more. I just think that, citizens at some point have to do something about these things too.
All right, I have to leave it there with you, JJ, but thanks for, going through this with us. But of course, I mean, you just remind me now of, the president answering some questions, and particularly from the EFF saying he fears nothing. And I'm saying it very PC here, that he will act. So we'll have to wait and see if indeed he will act against Willem Keys and I suppose other issues that have been raised. JJ Tabane joining us, of course, for that political overview. Don't miss out on his guest, PAC President Tumelo, of course, joining him on Power to Truth. They'll, of course, be looking on today, Human Rights Day, also it being named Shopville Day or not.